Hello everybody and welcome to another Deep Rock Galactic guide video here. Today we're going to be doing an overview and kind of guide for the driller. As you can see, this is the third one we have been doing after the gunner and the engineer, which we already did. So we're doing this. Scout comes after this one, and then, only 4 classes, as of now at least. So, we'll do some other guide videos for Deep Rock Galactic maybe, or overviews, and then anything else I can think of, and then probably maybe do a little let's play or live stream of this and then move on. So yeah, let's just go over to the driller real quick. This is what the driller looks like on a pretty base level. I haven't done much modification to the driller or his weapons, so this is pretty par for the course of what you're going to get. As you can see over on the right, you got his little intro video, kind of giving you a general feel, as well as a little description. It's, as a driller, you'll be equipped with a set of titanium power drills. Your job is to clear any blocked tunnels and obstacles in the path of your team, and in combat, you're also a force to be reckoned with. Your drills make short work of most enemies up close, and for longer range engagements, you're equipped with a heavy-duty flamethrower, as you can see he's holding and previewed in the video there. So I'll select this guy. Let's go over to the equipment table to break down some of this gear and the driller a little more. So as you can see, I don't have everything the driller has unlocked. As you can see with his primary and the secondary weapon, I obviously have the base weapons that you're given and will be using for the start, but I don't have his 2 other primary and secondaries unlocked. And while I don't have them unlocked, I can still tell you what they are and give you a good feel for when you'd want to use them and what they are, as well as show you some diagrams and stuff of some of the weapons that are available to him as a secondary and primary. So yeah, let's just go over the driller as a whole, I guess, real quick. So the driller, as you can see probably from the video in the description, as well as what weapons he has and what unique items he has here. He's a pretty interesting class. He's a class where obviously I don't have as much experience playing him as someone like the gunner, who I prestiged twice, or the engineer, who I'm about to prestige for the first time. I've only got 10 levels on him, and counting, I guess, 10 and a half-ish. But I've played enough of him, as well as played with enough driller mains, and seen how he works, to be able to understand him and his equipment and everything, and give you a good understanding of the class on a base level, and even deeper, really. So the driller, as I've said with basically the other 2 videos, all these classes kind of work in a support function towards the other. They all bring their unique equipment, tools, and abilities to the table that all kind of work together to make the mission and the environment run smoother than it otherwise would if you were missing one of them. So all of them are very pickable, viable. There's no non-viable class. You may like some more than others, or think some are better than others, or more vital than others, but at the end of the day, all are useful and welcome in most environments. And basically with the driller, as you can see here, you serve as a couple functions. One, as you can see kind of from the weapons you have, as well as I'll tell you what the other primaries are. You serve as kind of a crowd control and support function. With the flamethrower, it's obviously more of a crowd control function, but you also have the damage over time and the burn effect put on them if you don't kill them directly. So it kind of serves to support other people and help, someone like the gunner really take down whoever you're trying to burn. And it's something similar with the other 2 weapons we'll go into, where you serve as almost not directly doing a shit ton of damage and murdering whatever is in front of you, but almost as a support to the other classes that can dish out more damage, like the gunner, where you have these damage over time, or these negative effects that you put on the enemy that kind of help the other classes and yourself, I guess, deal with either managing them and running away or killing them. So yeah, let's just go over the driller real quick, and his equipment, to give you a better feel for him. We'll start up here with his primary weapons. As you can see, he has access to 3. 2 of them are locked for me, but I'll tell you what those are. But let's just start with the the CRISPR, I guess. CRSPR flamethrower heavy weapon. This is what it looks like. I don't have anything equipped for this, so this is what it looks like on a base level. As well as here's some of its upgrade effects here. So, as far as the flamethrower goes, it's pretty straightforward as to what it does. It shoots flames, throws flames, if you will, and it's a pretty effective weapon. This and one other weapon is what you will most commonly, almost exclusively, see drillers playing with. For one, it's for a while here up to level about 10ish, where you can even get the mission spree to unlock the next weapon, which is the Cryo Cannon. This is all you can use, and even after that, unlock all of your weapons. This is about what I see drillers, I'd say, using a little less than half the time. Still always a pretty popular weapon, even after you unlock other primaries for your use. And it's a solid weapon. You have a decent amount of fuel, and has a decent amount of tank size. So you're not reloading and worrying about fuel too much, especially in your role as more of a crowd control, like swarm burner, basically. Where it's still somewhat effective against bigger targets, but it really comes into play and is really effective against swarms and stuff like that, where there's mass amounts of grunts, Praetorians, smaller spiders, stuff like that you can really just kind of burn alive in a you can really just crowd control well and affect and kill and do a lot of damage to a shit ton of targets, more so than a lot of other classes have the capabilities to do with their primary weapon. Obviously some benefits of this: it hits pretty well, it does a good amount of initial damage per flame, and then obviously it leaves the burn effect. It does damage over time, so it's a fairly strong weapon on its own. But given the fact that it can affect so many people and really control such a large area of enemies and, kill them or do damage over time to help, manage that crowd, really makes it one of the better crowd control weapons in the game. So yeah, great gun. The next one here, which is the lock thing, is actually the Cryo Cannon. I think I can actually show you a picture of this over on the assignment board. Yeah, right here. That's what the Cryo Cannon looks like on a base level, and this is the license upgrade you'll have once you are eligible to receive the Cryo Cannon. So basically what the Cryo Cannon does, you might kind of guess it from its name, but it kind of shoots this like frost or freeze at, it kind of shoots this frost or freeze at, the enemy. And basically what this does is it does a base level of damage, but the damage it does isn't really the important part, as it doesn't really do a whole lot of damage on its own. It's more the fact of what the frost does to the enemy, not damage wise. So as you can imagine, it would slow the enemy quite significantly over the time it's getting shot, which is nice to help manage especially bigger targets that you can freeze, because it basically just slows them, so you don't have to worry about them chasing you and getting a shot off as much. But then what this does is it eventually freezes them. So if you've ever been in like the ice parts of the map, you've occasionally been frozen in place, so you have to like wiggle out of the ice. That's essentially what this does to any target, anywhere from a grunt all the way up to an oppressor per se. It can slow and then freeze them in place. And this not only is very helpful because of the damage it's outputting, as well as them being basically stuck in position here, not being able to really attack you or defend themselves, which is already a huge bonus. It also makes them incredibly weaker and less defensible. This is especially nice for armored targets, something like an oppressor or a Praetorian that has a lot of armor, that even a gunner with a lot of armor piercing capabilities has a harder time to kill without using like their entire magazine, basically. But the Cryo Cannon, if your driller freezes whatever enemy you're shooting at, I'm not sure the exact specs as like how much it amplifies the damage of your bullets when you shoot at a frozen target, but you just shred through enemies that are frozen, like it's nothing almost. So that in there lies probably the best benefit of having a cryo cannon in your group is when those big enemies come out, which you're always gonna have Praetorians, and most of the time you're gonna have oppressors, and those, especially the oppressors, are very heavily armored, high HP targets that even for gunners are very difficult targets to deal with, especially alone. And it's very nice to have another gun shooting at it, obviously, but also it being slowed by the frost effect and then eventually frozen in place, where you can really maneuver around without fear of it chasing you. And then it also amplifies your damage a shit ton. So you basically just mow through anything that this gun freezes, regardless of its armor or HP, because it basically just negates all of that and just boosts the amount of damage you do by a shit ton. Obviously, that's not exactly great units of measurement, but I'm not sure the exact specs of like how much it amplifies damage done to whatever's frozen. But very useful, very popular driller choice here. Definitely something great to bring to the table for the driller. The next primary, I don't have access to a license upgrade or diagram to show you, unfortunately. But it's called the Corrosive Sludge Pump, and it's kind of how you imagine that thing would be, just from the sound of it. It's kind of almost like, if you see the flamethrower and how it's designed and how it's got a fuel canister, it's almost like a more crude, fat canister attached to a more like almost sewage pump or like pipe oriented device, if that makes sense. You can look it up on your own if you want the exact model shown to you. But basically what it does is it kind of shoots this corrosive sludge out of the gun. And what it does is basically this corrosive sludge shoots out of the gun and it hits targets, it stays on the ground for a certain amount of time. And basically it does damage on a base level by hitting the target and getting applied to it. But the real effect is the damage over time and the lasting effect of the sludge. So this sludge makes it so, obviously it does damage over time to whatever enemy it hits or whatever enemy runs into the sludge that might be around the map that you've shot. From what I've seen, the corrosive sludge pump isn't a very popular choice for miners, for drillers in my experience. For one, it's not a great weapon. The corrosive sludge that it shoots doesn't do a whole lot of damage on impact, obviously, and the damage over time is nice, but to be honest, you'd rather kill it instantly, especially when it doesn't hit as hard or as fast as the flamethrower. So you're basically kind of just sealing off. I'd say the most useful effect of the corrosive sludge pump is trying to like kind of seal off a zone or an area or a tunnel of targets that they can't go through this without, basically getting corrosive sludge and having a lot of damage over time and maybe some slow effects if I remember correctly. So it's basically just almost like crowd control, kind of like a area of effect, sealing off type of ability, if that makes sense. Because the corrosive sludge itself doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and the damage over time is nice, and I believe there might be a slow effect for enemies within the sludge, but it's really not as good as the flamethrower at crowd control, and its negative effects towards enemies aren't as great or impactful as something like the Cryo Cannon. So not a very popular pick. Also, it's the last gun you unlock, so a lot of drillers just don't have access to it. So yeah, not a great weapon for the driller. Another thing to keep in mind if you do want to use a corrosive sludge pump, or really any of the driller's weapons, whether the cryo cannon or flamethrower, but particularly the sludge because of how long it lasts and the being on the ground and the enemies everywhere. The driller, more so than other classes especially, is very susceptible to accidentally injuring his teammates. So throwing on the friendly fire perk for your driller is very recommended, because it is very easy to accidentally flame one of your your friends, or you know, especially with the corrosive sludge pump. That sludge kind of goes everywhere and it stays there for a second. It's very easy for people to kind of run through that area, needing to get through or not remembering that you shot it there, and kind of stepping on that. And obviously it doesn't do a whole lot of damage if you have the friendly perk on, but it does a noticeable amount of damage over time, if you don't, especially. So definitely something to keep in mind there for the perks. Definitely want to have friendly on, because his weapons, more so than others, are very susceptible to doing friendly damage. Next, let's go to his secondary weapons. As you can see, the base thing is just a little pistol here, the Sudaba 120 pistol. It does have I do have some, that's the base pistol. I do have some modifications on it to make it look cooler, I guess. Those are the stats for the pistol. There's some upgrades you get for it. Overall, it's a pretty straightforward weapon. It's only just a pistol. Not much to it. Does a solid amount of damage. Has a decent ammo capacity. Just a solid secondary choice that is fairly competent and good at dealing with stuff like grunts and stuff. Obviously, you don't want to take this into a bigger fight with something like even like a Praetorian, honestly, but it does the job of dealing with smaller enemies very effectively and has a solid ammo capacity. Doesn't hit like a truck, does have some amazing firepower. It's just a solid all-around pistol that is good at what it does, which is do a solid amount of damage and have a solid amount of ammo to deal with smaller enemies like grunts and spiderlings or whatever they're fucking called. So yeah, solid pistol there. Next, you got what is called the experimental plasma charger, and I'll see if I have either of his secondaries up for unlock on the screen here. I don't believe I do, so I'll just kind of describe it to you. The experimental plasma charger is almost like what you would see, almost like a sci-fi kind of either ray gun or like radiation gun almost from like Fallout, if that makes any sense. It looks very sci-fi-esque, and the actual gun itself, is it's a fairly straightforward weapon as for what you'd think a plasma charger weapon would actually be. And as far as how it looks, it's basically, it has these two little rays at the bottom. And it has two different capabilities of like fire and everything. One is like regular shots by you just tapping a mouse button and everything, and then it has regular shots like you think of out of this, and then it has a charge shot where you hold the fire button down and then you release it to make one basically big plasma charge go out at the enemy. Basically what it produces or like fires is these like plasma blast. I don't know how to explain it incredibly well, but it's these like purple plasma blasts, like bolt things that go at the enemy. To be honest, it's a solid weapon. Having two fire modes is good, because if you want to just deal with regular small little grunts and spiderlings, just kind of spam it. But if you have a bigger target, or even a promoted grunt, basically like an armored one, the guards, having that ability to charge it up and get a little more damage out of the gun per shot, and having a little more impact. So it's there's a little more variety in what you can use it for. Obviously, if you just want a standard sidearm, I'd say the pistol you get is just fine. But if you want a sidearm that can do a little more, experimental plasma charger is a solid option. The last and the third of his little locked for me, but secondary weapons, is the Collet Wave Cooker, which is actually a pretty cool looking kind of device. It's almost like this circular, mechanical looking thing, with at the end it's kind of like a octagon or whatever looking stop sign, shape. I can't remember what the fuck it is. Like I guess a barrel at the end with this like kind of teal glowing energy at it. So basically, what this thing is it like it basically shoots out like these. I can't. It shoots out these like microwave energy. It's kind of like an energy weapon. That's whatever it's aimed at. It's like it has this energy and like microwave, like heat and energy source and like beams that come out at whatever enemy you're shooting. One thing to keep in mind is while this gun is cool and has this cool ability, it can be used as a more powerful secondary. It does have an overheating effect, kind of like a minigun for the gunner. So you kind of have to pick and choose and use it correctly as far as like being able to actually sustain use this thing without having to you know wait for it to cool down. Um, so yeah, besides that, this little beam it shoots is actually a pretty powerful weapon. It's pretty solid, especially for what you consider a secondary. It's pretty powerful. I'm not sure if I see people using this that often compared to the primary or other secondaries, but it's a cool little thing there, and it's for the range and for the secondary. It's a little more tamed, almost primary weapon. It's a pretty cool and solid weapon if you want to check it out and use it for yourself. But yeah, something to consider. Let's just go over his equipment here. So this is one of your kind of special, like equipment pieces, which is the Satchel Charge, which is a high explosive, as you can see. It's basically like almost like a C4, where it's like a remote detonated high explosive device. And this thing is a beast. This can be used for a variety of different things too. So the high explosive charge, there's the stats. It does a lot of damage. It has a very big radius of effect, and you only carry a couple of them, but they're very powerful tools. They can either be used as a weapon or a tool. As you can see, if you throw this, into a swarm or at a heavy, big enemy, it has quite the effect. So it'll hit them all, and it does a shit ton of damage. So it can be used as a very good crowd control, almost like landmine type of weapon, to do a lot of damage to whatever target or targets you're trying to use. On top of that, it can be used as more of like a drilling and mining tool, where you need to clear a lot of dirt or land, or for some reason you need to explode and do some detonation and demolition work on an environment, which everything here is destructive, so it'll explode. It can be used to break through stuff, clear environments, all that type of good stuff. And yeah, it's definitely a cool little explosive device to have. That, while not like an incredibly unique thing, because everyone has explosives and stuff they can use, nothing else packs quite this punch when it comes to explosives, and it's pretty fun to use. Next, we got probably the biggest component of the driller, which is reinforced power drills, which is a traversal tool. First of all, this can also double as a melee weapon, because when you use this as a melee weapon up close for the enemies, it does quite a bit of damage to whatever enemy you're doing it. So if you want to clear out spiderlings or grunts, or even stuff like Praetorians even up close, although you might take a lot of damage in return, it does quite a bit of damage. But generally you don't want to waste the fuel as well as get up close and personal with enemies, so it's rarely used that way. But it does have some stats for like damage and stuff there, as you can see. This is also note that it can overheat whether using it as a weapon or just mining, so you don't want to constantly be holding these things down. But this is a very unique and useful tool that kind of makes up the driller as who he is. This is mainly used as a tool, as a traversal tool, as it says there. What this is mainly used for is two or three things. First is obviously just drilling through stuff, whether that's compacted dirt to get to the next area, which is usually the driller's job to go through, or making like tunnels or like makeshift stairways up to stuff through the cliffs and sides of caves to get to certain minerals you might need to get, and don't have someone to zip line up there, or go through to a different part of the tunnel. So you drill a hole through part of the wall of the tunnel. It's very useful, as while other classes can do this with a pickaxe, it takes a lot longer to do it than, you know, when you have a driller to just drill through. Another use is, once you complete a mission in a lot of caves, you generally have to run back through the entire cave in this kind of not very efficient loop to get back to wherever your drop pod lands. But if you have a driller, a lot of times he can simply just drill a hole, like a path for you, directly to the drop pod, so you get there a lot faster and more efficiently. And to be honest, kind of a lot safer, because you can kind of bottleneck all the enemies that are chasing you, which makes it a lot easier for, you know, people protecting you and your group to kind of deal with all the mass amount of swarm enemies that are chasing you when you try to escape. So it's a very useful travel tool to help you guys get places faster, either to or from a mission. And it's very useful to manipulate terrain to get places you need to in a mission, whether that be, you know, drill through a tunnel or drill up through the cave walls to kind of make a stairway through the walls to get to some minerals, or, you know, a cliff that you don't have any zip lines to get to. It's a very useful, cool little tool there. Last but not least, we got his grenade selection. This is the base grenade you have, if you can call it that. The impact stacks is a throwable. Basically what this does is you have 8 of these. You throw this, that's 160 damage, area damage of 80, effects rate is 1.4. You throw this, it kind of, you know, impacts the target, does the damage. It also does some like burst electricity damage when it impacts the target, and hopefully kills it, but if it doesn't, it does a lot of damage to it. And the nice thing about this, on top of getting a lot of these are retrievable equipment. So after you throw this isn't a done thing. You can go get more axes just by picking them up. So out of either the corpse of, you know, or right off the back of a living target, wherever you threw this, wherever it landed, go to that spot, and you can pick it up and use it again. Or if it's in a target, you can kill it, pick it out of their corpse, and you can use an axe again. So you have basically access to a shit ton of throwable items that are retrievable and reusable, and pack quite a bit of punch per axe. So quite effective weapons and cool little throwable items that you get access to. Next we got the high explosive grenade. Not much to say about this. This is a pretty standard grenade. You get 6 of them, you throw them, do 140 damage and a 4.3 radius damage, 4.3 meter radius. Has a fear effect and an armor breaking effect, which is nice. But the main effect of this, it explodes like a regular grenade, does damage in a radius to help damage targets, maybe fear them so they run away from you, and it goes through armor pretty effectively. So if it's an armor target, doesn't matter, still do a lot of damage. Solid grenade choice, can't go wrong with your regular grenades. Next we got the neurotoxin grenade, throwable, which is kind of what you think it is. It's basically a gas grenade. You get 4 of these, and you throw them for 10 seconds in a 7.5 meter radius. There's basically a neurotoxin cloud of gas that, you know, gases whatever enemies walk into it and does like a slow damage over time effect for them. Another thing, as you can see in the description over there, is it's highly flammable. So if you're using a flamethrower, go ham on the gas and whatever's in it, because it helps, you know, with flames. It can do more damage and have greater burn effects when targets are in this. The gas is lit on fire. So a very useful tool to pair with the flamethrower of the driller. So yeah, solid grenade choice right there, especially if you're using the flamethrower. So that does it for the driller and his equipment, as well as an overall kind of feel and guide for the driller. Very fun, unique class to use. Definitely a useful class to bring along on any of your missions. And yeah, hope you guys liked the video. Got a feel for the driller and some of his equipment, even though I apologize I couldn't show you some of his equipment. Just had to give you a description of what it was. Yeah, hope it was somewhat informative. Like and subscribe if you liked the video and thought it was helpful. Helps grow the channel and grow the video and get it out there. Comment down below if you have any questions or, you know, recommendations for videos you want to see, and I'll see you guys in the next video.